According to a new study from researchers at Penn State, eating a diet rich in spices reduces the body's negative responses to eating high-fat meals. So the question is, does that mean a cinnamon donut isn't so bad? Here to tell us more about the study and the health benefits of spices is our resident food coach and registered dietitian, Cynthia Sass. Cynthia, it's great to see you again.
Thank you. You too.
All right, I know the answer to the donut question. You're probably going to tell me not to eat it, right?
Yeah, I would say it doesn't quite cancel out the other impact of that donut.
All right, it smells wonderful out here this morning. You brought a host of different spices, from garlic and cloves to paprika. I've heard before, and I've read in different studies, that smelling certain foods like chocolate, you can have some health benefits. Is that the same thing with spices?
Well, what's been shown with spices is that when you smell them, it may help reduce your appetite. Very interesting. But to get the antioxidant effects that you talked about, you really need to ingest it.
Okay, let's talk about the study. Does it cancel out the negative effects of eating high-fat foods, or just reduces them?
It reduces them. So in this study, they found that when 2 tablespoons of spices were consumed with a fatty meal, the blood fats or triglycerides were reduced by 30%.
Wow.
That's really significant.
So how did they do this study?
What they did was, it was actually a small group of men between the ages of 30 and 65 that were overweight, but they were otherwise healthy. So they had a control group and an experimental group. The control group had plain meals, no seasonings added, and the experimental group had a lot of seasonings added to their meals, 2 tablespoons. And they had a chicken curry, they had an Italian herbed bread, and they had a cinnamon biscuit. So they took blood samples from the men from both groups after the meal, so every 30 minutes, and they compared the 2 groups, and they found really significant effects, because the group not only had 30% lower triglyceride levels, but they also had higher levels of antioxidants in their bloodstream. So really interesting.
Very interesting. Now, you mentioned 2 tablespoons, and that can go a long way for a lot of people. Some people, they don't like spicy foods. I know your husband is not a big fan of them, but I love spicy food. I mean, so do
you can use a variety. I mean, in this study, 2 tablespoons was used, but that is a lot, but you can use a mixture. So here we have cloves.
Okay, let's talk about cloves. Where can you put it?
I love to put cloves, if we're talking about eating high fat versus healthier foods. The best way to introduce these really is not to say, oh, I'm just going to have a cheeseburger with basil and then it's going to be fine. You really want to incorporate them into healthy things, right? So when most people think of cloves, I think they think of baked goods or cookies and cakes and things like that. But you can also put a little bit of cloves in your coffee in the morning. If you're making coffee with skim milk or soy milk, sprinkle a little ground cloves in there. It's a great way to get, it's kind of like a feast for your senses. Because you have the aroma, you have the flavor, and of course you have the antioxidant benefit. So I like to put that in that.
Talk to me about turmeric.
Turmeric is amazing. It has an incredibly high antioxidant capacity. I think most of us think of it in curry because it's the main ingredient in curry seasoning, but it's also wonderful on cauliflower. So I'll just take some cauliflower, roast it in the oven with a little extra virgin olive oil, and put some turmeric on there. It's also great with potatoes. People like it with eggs, and of course you can get the curry seasoning as well because it's very high in turmeric.
Oh, I love curry. I love curry on eggs, like you mentioned. Tell me a little bit about, is this the first study done on the antioxidant properties?
It's really not, actually. There was another interesting study, I think it was a couple of years ago, where they had a fatty meal. So in this case, it was a bagel with cream cheese and whole milk, and they gave people either a placebo with it or real strawberries, whole strawberries. And what they found was, in the group that had the strawberries, the effects of the fatty meal were decreased. In that study, the LDL, or the bad cholesterol, I always remember lousy for L, it wasn't oxidized as much. And oxidation of bad cholesterol is what creates the domino effect that leads to heart attack, stroke, hardening of the arteries. So if you can reduce that oxidation of the bad cholesterol, you can really protect your heart. So that study really showed that just having 1 serving of strawberries with this fatty meal could really protect you. So I think we're finding more and more that antioxidant-rich foods, whether it be spices, which are incredibly high in antioxidants. In fact, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon has as much antioxidant capacity as half a cup of blueberries.
Really?
Yeah. So that's a great way to get it in. But of course, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, anything that comes from the plant world, really, essentially, is going to be a source of antioxidants.
Well, you mentioned strawberries in particular. It seems like kind of like this magic food. What are some other good summer foods that we could reach for?
Oh, right now, I mean, cherries and berries and melon are in season, and you can go to any farmer's market or your local area and pick those up. The good thing about those is if you buy excess and you have sort of leftovers that you're not sure that you can eat before they go bad, you can freeze them, and they're really going to be good for about 6 months after that. So I love to buy extra berries and cherries now. You can just pick the fresh cherries and then freeze them in bags, and you're good to go, you know, throughout the rest of the year when they're not in season.
We used to do that on the beach this summer. We would take frozen cherries, a whole bag of them down to the beach because they wouldn't go bad. It was fabulous. Let's also talk about rosemary, because my rosemary is doing pretty well in my garden right now. So it's a good summer ingredient we could add too.
Yeah, well, you know, I have to say, I love potatoes, and rosemary potatoes are just one of the best things that you can eat. But really, rosemary can go in almost anything. Of course, I love to put in pasta dishes, any kind of whole grain dishes, quinoa, wild rice. I mean, it really kind of goes well with almost everything. But what's interesting is you can use some of these more savory seasonings with fruit. And when you grill fruit on the grill, because right now, grilling season, introducing some fresh or even dried rosemary with fruit is a really great combination.
A friend of mine they roasted peaches on the grill. What would you put on the peaches? Any of these?
It could be either basil. We don't have basil here, but basil or rosemary would really work well with peaches.
Yeah, it was mouth-watering. Tell me a little bit about the other spices, because we didn't mention garlic powder.
Yes, garlic powder, not garlic salt. So garlic powder is really just pureed, you know, kind of dried garlic that's been powdered. And, you know, we know that garlic has other properties like helping to lower inflammation in the body, which is sort of a trigger of premature aging and disease, lowering blood pressure. If, you know, it's worth the garlic breath, I think, to put that into your food. Of course, it goes with everything. It goes with chicken, fish, you know, any kind of vegetable. I wouldn't put it with fruit, but...
yeah, you never know. How about paprika?
Paprika, I actually was able to go to Budapest, and I was able to see, I mean, that's kind of the land of paprika. Goulash, I had an amazing mushroom goulash there that was just loaded with paprika. It's really fantastic in stews and in any kind of sort of crock pot recipes. You can put some paprika in there. It gives a little bit of kick and lots of flavor.
Oh, fabulous. You have me really hungry. We're talking about all this great food. Great examples, great ideas, and a really interesting study. Cynthia, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And for more about this topic and others, you can log on to the health page at abcnews.com.